Hello, I'm Ranil Jayawardena. I'm your local Member of Parliament, MP. That means that I represent you, your families, your neighbours, your friends up in London, in Westminster, on those green benches that you sometimes see on the news or in the newspapers. And it's a great privilege to represent you because I've always lived around here. In fact, once upon a time, I was a scout and a Cub Scout before that and a Beaver before that in 7th Bramshill Hook Scout Group. And it's a great pleasure now to be the president of Bramshill Scouts. But I know that you're doing some great work in girl guiding at the moment and that you're looking to create a political party of your own and to get people to vote for your promises, which is a great challenge that I'm sure you'll have lots of fun and also hopefully learn a few things along the way doing. Sorry I can't be with you in person, but during the week your MP, along with every MP across this country, has to be in London, in Westminster, to vote on different pieces of law, to question ministers about policy, and indeed to meet all sorts of people who come to speak to us about the way that they think government should take steps to improve people's lives. But I do have the 3 questions that have been sent by you, and I'll try and answer them to the best of my abilities by video. So question 1 was, do you ever get nervous before giving a speech? And if so, what helps manage your nerves? The answer is yes, sometimes. I think everyone does. And perhaps people get more nervous when something matters just that little bit more. And so I guess the thing that I do to try and manage my nerves in those instances is just to make sure I'm absolutely on top of everything. So, understanding what I'm saying fully, but also going behind that and saying, right, well, what were the other options? And I'll give you some examples. When I was at the Department for International Trade, and by the way, that is the flag of the Board of Trade behind me, with the ship on it. The Department for International Trade was responsible for trade agreements with countries around the world, and we secured new trade agreements with 71 countries around the world, plus the EU, totaling trade more than £800 billion. But I would face questions as Minister from any MP across the House of Commons, and they could ask me a question on any one of those trade agreements, and I had to be ready with the answer. And the way to manage my nerves was to actually fully understand the detail and be ready to provide the answer to any question. And then when I knew that I had the answers, my nerves were no longer there. So that would be my answer to that one. And then question 2, how does the language between written and spoken differ when explaining a point of view? Are persuasive words and sentences more or less powerful in speech compared to writing? Well, actually, I personally have always ended up writing as if I'm giving a speech. A lot of my writing, a lot of my letters and so on are very much written the way I would say them. So for me, I actually just try and talk about things the way I would in person with someone if I'm writing to them as well. But I guess the point is that you want to make sure that you are articulating your case as strongly as possible, bringing in the relevant examples that you want to make, and I think that applies whether in writing or if it was in a speech. And so you want to provide examples about why you believe something, what the alternatives are and why you've discounted those, what perhaps the other people who are disagreeing with you, what they are standing for and why they are wrong. And I know you're trying to create a political party here, but in my political party, the Conservative Party, I look at what the Labour Party are producing and what the Liberal Democrats are producing, what the Green Party are producing, and sometimes actually we happen to agree, but quite often, more often than not, we'll disagree, not on where we want to go as a country. I mean, everyone wants to create more jobs, everyone wants people to have more money in their back pocket, but we have different ideas on how we get there. And so we'd want to debate that, and those are the sorts of things that you'd want to have really clearly set out, whether in a speech or written down. I guess the one difference is that if you're writing something down, you've got a lot more time to hone those arguments, and you've got a lot more space than in a speech where you need to keep people with you. And I might have lost you already, but you've got to keep people with you, and you've got to keep it interesting. And so that is, I guess, the difference between writing and speaking. But then other people might have different ideas. And third, what was your most challenging or difficult speech that you had to give? Why? And what did you learn from this experience? Well, I'd actually go back to when I was at school, and I had to give a speech to the whole school when I was in year 7. And that was quite nerve-wracking. You know, this is a new school, relatively speaking. I had only just gone there that year. And yes, I knew some people in the school in my year group, and particularly the people who'd come from my junior school, but there was 4 years of people that I didn't know who were all older than me, all sorts of teachers who I didn't know in front of me, and I was asked to give a speech, and that was challenging. That was difficult because it's the first speech I'd really ever properly given. But what I learned was that actually there's nothing to fear from giving a speech if, as I said earlier, you believe in what you're saying. And if you believe in what you're saying and you want to tell that story to the world, then actually there's nothing to be afraid of at all. And if this is the first speech that you've ever had to give, then once you've done it, and you will do it as part of this project, once you've done it, then you'll know that you can always give a speech, both now in the guides, but also for the rest of your life. And that's a great skill that you'll have learned alongside all sorts of other skills that you learn in girl guiding. So thanks for asking me to record a video for you. Sorry I can't be with you again, and I hope that you really enjoy creating a political party and trying to persuade people to vote for your promises. Have a great time.